click it into place. And then finish assembling the door panel. Here's what the final product looks like. Snap the grill in place, and we'll be done with this door.
Now to the back door.
For the rear door, we basically have the same process. He's already gone ahead and figured out where the panel needs to go and added in our nutsert rivets. This panel is a little different from the front. As we said earlier, we added in the extra 1/4 of an inch to compensate for all of the nonsense that's here. We need a little bit longer screw than we needed for the front. The panel pulls nice and tight and covers all of the chewed up metal and gives us a nice flat area to mount our speaker to. These are coaxials, so we don't have a big passive crossover putting anywhere. Fernando already has the wire with the ends on them. Pre-drill the screw holes. Pro tip, put your finger over the surround, just like Fernando's doing here. That's because your finger, well, you can put a band-aid on it and it will eventually heal. The speaker, it never will. The last step is to aim the tweeter. We're gonna turn it towards the back. And the very last step is to put the door panel back on. And now we've managed to take a very weird situation. Would you agree, Fernando?
Yes.
We still haven't figured out what's going on and why they did that. As it turns out, the customer bought the car and it already had this stuff in it. Who knew? Right? He'll get that last door panel on. The reason they ran the power wire up that and did the hole through the floor and all that nonsense was so that they didn't have to run the power wire all the way across the back of the car, up the driver's side, and then back over to the passenger side of the car. Seems like an excess amount of wire to be used. However, in some cases you have to do that because it's almost impossible to get through the firewall on the passenger side. Almost impossible, but not impossible, especially when you have a Fernando. He's come up with a plan so that we don't have to do that. And of course, so that we don't have to destroy the power wire on the headers. The first step was removing the whole battery tray, getting this out. As you can see, that has never been done, but that gave us access to the firewall, and that allowed him to drill our 2 4-gauge holes into the firewall from the outside in. Doing that can be scary. You don't want to just like, yeah, go for it. Drill 2 pilot holes, which is what he did. Take an 1/8 inch drill bit, barely goes through, and then you take your probe and you send it through to make sure that there's nothing on the other side. Before you even make the pilot hole though, is you're doing a lot of investigation around that area to make sure that there's nothing there and that you feel confident to make the pilot hole.
Yeah, I mean, you go in the inside and you see it. It's a piece of carpet that you have to remove, definitely. Right here, this is a piece of carpet. You remove it, you got plenty of space. The factory wire harness goes in the top. You drill in down.
This will allow us to come out here, safe distance from the engine, put the battery tray back in, we'll make our fuse mounts, and we'll be able to use a normal length power up the passenger side of the car. While we had the battery and tray out, Fernando used that opportunity to make a mount that attaches to the actual tray, because there's really not a lot of places to mount this fuse bracket to. That means we will take the battery in and out for service with no issues, but this is now permanently part of the whole apparatus. We have 2 fuse holders we're going to put here, so there's plenty of room to do that. You can reinstall the battery back into place. Along with the dash kit, the other piece we're going to recycle is the main wiring harness. Pull the tape off. If you get one of these, it's all sticky gooey with tape. Mineral spirits and a rag will clean all this stuff off, not make it so disgusting. We're gonna remove this T-tap here, solder the wire back into place. We need to go into the car and also fix the wiring that's cut. A lot of the times on these Fords, they have this power antenna wire and usually an amplifier turn-on wire that don't go to anything in an F150. These are easy enough to pull out and repin for those steering wheel wires. I want to see if this has an amplified antenna or an amplifier turn on or anything like that. Simply count the pins here. This is 3 over. Flip and check. There's nothing in pin 3. We can remove this and use this for our steering wheel control wire, which is this cut blue-red wire here that we'll solder back together, and of course remove this T-tap. We are going to be retaining the steering wheel controls. The module he had in there was specifically for a Pioneer. We're now switching to a Kenwood. We're going to be updating that to an SWI CP2. To get get our instructions, we just go to the Control Pro app on our smartphone and type in our make, model, and year. It'll tell us the dip switch settings to put on the side of the unit, as well as all the wiring that we're going to need to do. The reason why I wanted to check this real quick is on some of the Fords, there's two wires for steering wheel. There's a ground wire and there is the steering wheel wire. The blue-red is the steering wheel wire. There's also a green-orange next to it that will need to be grounded. I'm gonna hop back in the car and see if that wire exists in the harness. I just hopped in to check and there is in fact a green-orange wire that will need to be grounded. That means I don't have enough pins available. I'm gonna check my spare pin box that I have. I'm sure I have an extra one. Most of the time when you get this harness new, there is two. There's someone probably removed that extra one from here. Otherwise, it's a pretty straightforward connection. On this Kenwood harness, we have all 8 speaker wires that we will not be using. We'll just be using these. Our amplifier is gonna connect up to these here. This also has the blue-yellow steering wheel control input from our CP2. It has an orange-white illumination. There is a blue-white that is going to power up our amplifiers, so we'll run that back. A black ground, a yellow constant 12 volts, a red accessory or key, and there is also a blue wire for that amplified antenna if it did have it, which it doesn't, so this will just get capped off as well. And then there's the light green emergency brake wire that requires a ground to access the menus in the radio. Purple-white, a positive reverse trigger. To repin this harness, you can see the red piece inside of there goes all the way down to the side. Flathead screwdriver, push up on each side and then reach in with the tip and you can pull it out. There's a little tooth on the top with a pin extraction tool. Push up on that and you can pull your wire out. Just like that. Next, relocate it into the proper hole. When looking at the app on the phone, it gives you a layout of where the pins need to go. Find something simple like the constant 12 volts, in this case, which is 1 here in the corner. Lay your harness appropriately. 13 should be ground, which it is. You can come over into this bottom corner over 1. 19 is going to be the ground. 18 is going to be our steering wheel in wire. Clip the wires into place and make sure that they are straight. Replace in the red clip lock. Just push down on it from the 2 corners and our harness is all set and ready to go. With the Control Pro app up, I need 2 blacks, the yellow red, and the white red wires to retain my steering wheel controls. The rest are not going to be used. The red, the yellow, and one of the blacks are going to get connected to constant 12 volts accessory and ground. The second ground and the white with a red stripe are going to go to our steering wheel wires. I like to separate those wires out. Pack gives you a pretty lengthy run of wire. Figure out where you're going to need to put your steering wheel control module, where it's going to need to get tucked in the dash, and then trim the wires accordingly. There's no reason to use all 2 feet of wire if you don't need it. In this harness, they did have that T-tap on. I've cut the wire off. I'm adding in a new piece of wire to that point. Our red-white wire from the steering wheel interface is going to go to the blue antenna wire that we repinned. I had an extra harness that I was able to remove a random wire from. That is going to be my ground. The wires are soldered up for the steering wheel control. I do need to go back because I hadn't flicked my dip switches yet. I like to fast forward to what my wiring is going to look like before I do that. Now they're set, I like to add a piece of tape over them. I'm a big fan of testing my steering wheel controls before the end to make sure that they are at least registering. In the end of the installation, if you've missed something, it's no fun to have to pull everything back apart. Put some tape over your positives so they don't accidentally touch the ground. Let's hop in the car and see if this thing works. I fixed the harness, resoldered all the wires together so that we could do this test. Plug it in. This has a LED here. When you plug it in, it should start blinking green. Turn the car on. Lights up red. When I press one of the buttons on the steering wheel, it should blink green, registering that it is communicating with the steering wheel. The Ford only has 4 buttons to use. Press all 4 buttons. I'm not worried about what they're doing. I just want to make sure that it's registering to this module. In some cases, you'll have cars where there's multiple buttons. Let's say in a Nissan, if your phone control buttons don't work, that's telling you that there's a Bluetooth module that needs to be bypassed somewhere in the car. That's why we do this test. But this one works fabulously. I can finish getting the harness done done now. Harness is all set and ready to go. Main end that's gonna plug into the back of the radio. All the wires we're not gonna use are capped off and shrink wrapped into a bundle. Our steering wheel control is teed off over to here all by itself. That way we'll be able to mount this in the dash. There was a reverse wire trigger coming up to the front for the backup camera that doesn't work. We put a provision on here to attach that to. This is our pigtail that our amplifier speed wire is going to come and connect to. I loop over the remote turn on into this, so it just comes through here, loops over and comes out this way. That's why you don't see an extra remote turn on wire hanging out.